Hi, I'm Yashvi Shah, and you're listening to Global Stories by Star Media, where every week we visit different countries to educate you on trending news. In this week's episode, we're flying to Australia. When you think of Australia, do you imagine bright sunny weather, high waves to go surfing, or a clear sky with lots of trees and flowers? I know that I used to imagine such things, but my imagination only lasted until 2017 came along. In February of 2017, my parents and I started planning our yearly summer trip, and we all decided to visit New South Wales in Australia because it's a well known state in summer. By April, we booked our tickets to fly to New South Wales. I remember we spent 2 days in New South Wales capital, Sydney. We even visited Harbour Bridge one evening, and the view was breathtaking as it showed the city's unifying beauty. After that, we embarked on a 2-hour journey from Sydney to Katoomba, which is the main center of the famous Blue Mountains. We spent hours hiking at the Blue Mountains, looking at the clear blue skies and beautiful waterfalls. It was a lovely 7-day stay in New South Wales, and it was a summer I will never forget. However, I never imagined that in 2 years from that time, summer in Australia would turn into a fearful burning season. That's right. June 2019 marks the beginning of Australia's most devastating bushfire season, and the country is burning for help. I recently stumbled across a blog post by Nareli Abram, an associate professor at the Australian National University. According to Nareli, workplaces and schools have shut down due to the disastrous fire danger as the citizens seek shelter to avoid the hazardous heat waves and the amount of smoke in the air. This is what Australia's summer looks like now, in contrast to my vacation about 2 years ago. Did you know that as of January 2020, the Australian bushfires this season have burnt more than 18 million hectares, destroying thousands of buildings, including over 2,000 homes? 33 people died as a result of the fires, and approximately 1 billion animals have lost their lives. But this is not the end of the devastating effects left by the bushfires. Jacinta Burton, a Southwest journalist, mentions 3 Busselton firefighters who were face to face with the wall of fires in Australia's capital, Canberra, in her news article in 2020. The 3 firefighters took a bus to Cooma in the Snowy Mountains and found themselves by the Canberra fire, which burned over 80,000 hectares. Firefighter Todd Johnson mentioned how the smoke in the air was so thick they were unable to breathe properly and had to immediately put their masks on as soon as they got out of their truck. Not only that, Michael Mann, our climate scientist, recently traveled to the Blue Mountains in New South Wales to witness climate change in action. He wrote an article speaking about his experience, giving some further insight into just how much these fires are affecting Australia. I have asked my friend Rosemary Rickraj to provide some content to a fragment of Michael Mann's claims.
We traveled to the Blue Mountains, one of Australia's natural wonders. It's known for its lush, temperate rainforests, majestic cliffs, rock formations, and panoramic vistas.
Instead of seeing a widely stretched area of rainforest encased by remote blue-tinged mountain ranges as he expected, Michael saw a brown haze had replaced valleys filled with smoke in the usual blue sky.
The brown skies I saw in the Blue Mountains that day were the product of climate change.
If we take into account the heat and drought in dry regions, we get these unusual bushfires that are spreading all across the country. But this is not all Michael has seen. While he still could, Michael visited the Great Barrier Reef, which is said to be one of the greatest wonders of our planet Earth.
Places like the Great Barrier Reef will disappear in a matter of decades if there is no dramatic reduction in global carbon emissions.
These fires and the increase in the country's carbon emissions might just be the poster child of a more significant issue: climate change, which brings us to consider the following questions. 1. Are the fires really about climate change? 2. Do carbon emissions play a role in these fires? 3. Has anything like this occurred in Australia before? 4. Have any actions been taken towards these fires and devastations? What actions, if any? This is Global Stories, and we will be right back after a short break with answers. Now, there are numerous topics related to fire and climate change, but first, we need to understand what causes climate change. A 2006 study recounts that our climate has been warming as a result of increases of active gases in the atmosphere by human activities. Such gas emissions can not only cause long-term climate change, but also alter the variability of the climate in such ways that would increase the risk of fire. After understanding climate change, we need to understand what causes bushfires. The same 2006 study claims that fire activity is strongly influenced by four factors: weather or climate, fuels, ignition agents, and human activities. If you remember, I mentioned that heat and drought from an already dry region leads to the rapid spreading of fire. A study by Ross Gorte, a retired natural resource economist, claims that dry conditions and lightning creates fires. What causes these droughts from such dry regions? Although there are few natural causes of droughts, one of the primary reasons is the land and water temperatures. As Vice President of Landscape Solutions, Richard Vestusia describes that as overall temperatures increase, more water evaporates and several weather conditions increase. Climate change enhances wildfires and makes them more frequent due to its effects on dryness and weather conditions. So, if we combine biomass and dry weather conditions, we get fuel. Add in an ignition source, such as lightning, and a wildfire happens. The warming of our climate and the changes associated with it are caused by burned fossil fuels, which include oil, coal, and natural gases. One of these gases include carbon dioxide. When we mine for coal, we mine away at our blue skies because we burn coal for electricity. When we burn such fossil fuels, they produce a hefty amount of carbon dioxide, which traps heat in the atmosphere, and this action results in a warming of our planet. Such greenhouse gas emissions causes long-term climate changes in Earth's climate and changes the variabilities in the climate in such ways that would increase the risk of fire. A 2007 study found that an increase in carbon dioxide levels increased fire danger. The 2019 bushfires have pumped out over half of Australia's annual carbon emissions. As of August of the same year, fires in states such as New South Wales and Queensland have emitted a combined amount of about 300 million tons of carbon dioxide. This amount is over half of the country's total gas footprint in 2018. It's quite common for Australia's greenhouse emissions from wildfires to exceed carbon dioxide from fossil fuel sources, and that's because large fires in savannas and grasslands are a natural part of the ecosystem. However, in the current Australian fires, specifically in New South Wales, the fires are exceptional since it could take much more time for the vegetation to recover. News reporter Hisu Lee discusses some insightful remarks from an assistant research scientist, Niels Andela, in her news article. Niels said, in savannas and grasslands, regrowth of burnt vegetation typically absorbs the emitted carbon dioxide within a few years, but for forests, this may take several decades. The 2019 fires in New South Wales mainly occur in the forest areas, so the key question for the state would be how quickly the vegetation would recover, or maybe some forests never fully recover at all. Previously, we found that climate change and an increase in carbon emissions in Australia increase extreme fire danger. We know that 2019 Australian wildfires are unprecedented, but what do the past wildfires in Australia have to do with the current fires? In December of 2019, the acting Prime Minister of Australia, Michael McCormack, assured people that the country had smoke cases and bushfires in the past. When Prime Minister Scott Morrison returned from his short holiday in Hawaii, he adopted a similar line about Australia and that it always had bushfires, which is true. However, has it ever had bushfires like the ones from 2019? Environment editor Adam Morton discusses Australia's history of bushfires with New South Wales Rural Fire Service spokeswoman Angela Burford in his news article. According to Angela, in the past few years, we have had a total area burned for the whole season of about 280,000 hectares. In 1974, the Far West fires of New South Wales burnt about 3.5 million hectares, followed by the 1984 Christmas Day fires, which burned about 2 million hectares. Not only that, but 2009 began on a devastating note in February, says Justin Vaisudis, head of education and engagement. Victoria was faced with fire danger, as well as the longest drought on record in the Black Saturday wildfires. The geographical range and the fact everything is happening at once is making the 2019 fires unprecedented. This is interesting because there has been a fire through New South Wales, going into Gippsland, followed by Adelaide Hills, then near Perth, and later on the east coast of Tasmania. There has never been a situation like this in Australia's history. We know that climate change and an increase in carbon emissions influence and increase the risk of fires. We also know that Australia has a history of bushfires, but the ones that started in 2019 are unprecedented and devastating. However, are people taking any action towards these fires? Let's find out. Australian singer, songwriter, and actress Kylie Minogue tweeted in January 2020 about helping those affected by the bushfires. Her tweet read, "As a family, we've donated $500,000 towards the immediate firefighting efforts and the ongoing support which will be required." Near the end of the tweet, Kylie emphasizes that the amount and distance do not matter when it comes to helping people and that any support would be appreciated. Kylie is encouraging her fans and viewers to step up and do something. But the real question is anyone understanding this message? Is Kylie one of the few initiating help and support? Not even the current catastrophic fires seem to bring any form of political action in Australia because politicians are failing to realize the connection between climate crisis and the increase in extreme weather events. Besides the human impact, there are about 113 species that require immediate help in recovering from these bushfires. The Kangaroo Island dunnart and the long-footed potteroo both are facing a similar danger. They are endangered and now suffer habitat loss. The Australian native koalas have also made the list. However, an expert panel was formed to organize the recovery efforts for such threatened species in Australia. A couple of non-government organizations have even enacted some quick tactics. In a broadcast interview with Jeremy Hobson and Catherine Simpson, experts are concerned that the measures currently put in place will come undone if concrete action isn't taken on climate change throughout the country. However, there is still hope, especially after the expert panel was formed. Australia's government even committed about $50 million to help aid wildlife rescue. Australia is said to be one of the most fire-prone countries in the world. We spoke about the summer of 2019 as it presents itself as the ideal storm for wildfires due to long-term warming of the climate, which delivers severe fire weather. We also touched on the fact that some forests in Australia might not recover in today's warmer climate. We discovered carbon emissions are rapidly increasing, which increases the risk of fire, making the burning trees release more and more carbon. Australia has already burned over 18 million hectares of land, meaning there are fewer living trees left to pull carbon dioxide out of the air and store it. We also found there is no evidence of fires similar to the 2019 bushfires because it's uncommon to see such massive fires, since certain parts of the world don't get the unrelenting nature of weather like Australia does. If nobody is willing to take the right action towards the catastrophic bushfires to prevent climate change, it will eventually become a norm. However, there is still a cause for hope to take action. So, what can we take from this burning trip to Australia? If Australians can value their wildlife and their country enough to step up, intervene, and help make a difference when things get awful, imagine what people outside of Australia like us can do. The federal government and the state governments are taking on strategic approaches towards these fires, but more could be done. Why? Because there's still hope. Because I realize the severity of these fires. Do you?